Good evening, my Graveling Growls. It is ManSant back at you with a gameplay video with commentary here. And this time on screen, we've got myself on a Claws Levia build versus Tom, a local player at my Armory Event, who's still learning Prism. I thought this would be a fun matchup to go ahead and upload because, as you might have seen in my feature match on the from Nationals coverage, I got to play against a Prism, but that game went south very, very quickly. So this matchup is going to be more what a Prism versus Levia matchup should look like. A little bit of spoiler there. But what we see here is that I won the die roll, and I elected to go first. I pretty much always choose to go first as a Levia player, because you want to get that arsenal advantage before you start blocking with cards. Now, in theory, if your opponent always attacks you if they're going first, then it is better to go second, but you can't guarantee that they're going to do that. So it is just the safest play to go first, go ahead, get that arsenal, and perhaps get a card in graveyard. And that's what I was fortunate enough to have happen there. I had the Deep-Rooted Evil in hand, so I was able to play that out, get it in graveyard, and that's going to be a big bonus because now I don't have to worry about getting that in graveyard by other means, because it can be kind of difficult because it doesn't block. So it is sometimes correct to not attack on the first turn versus Prism, because if they play an instant, then you get priority back and you can clear the aura, clear the shields. So that's why we see Tom with 3 shields here. He did abuse the fact that I attacked and went ahead and cast and got those shields in play. But I'm okay with that. Shields are not something I'm too afraid of. I know they're going to get cleared at some point just because Levia's attacks are so tall. And getting that deep-rooted in graveyard is really, really important the earlier you can do it, because there's the potential that it just sits in hand for way too long while you wait for a way to get rid of it. And you don't really want to pitch it, right? You do want to engrave. So he's coming at me with a blue Wartune Herald, and it's coming in for 5, trying to draw a card out of my hand to potentially break Phantasm. But I've got cards that I'd rather engrave anyway, with the Howl from Beyond and the Blue Unworldly. Those are cards they can go ahead and go to grave, and in theory, set up my graveyard really well for a Banish 3 attack next turn. So he does follow up his attack, however, with a red Phantasmaclasm, which I was definitely not expecting. You don't tend to see that card brought into the Levia matchup, because most of my cards are just going to pop your Phantasm anyway. But he does make me bottom my only card that could block it. I had a red Boneyard Marauder in hand. My blue Deadwood won't let me block with it. So I draw into a new card, and it is a blue Eye of Ophidia. So that Phantasmaclasm is actually going to connect, which, man, that's 1 out of a million in the Levia matchup, but good for Tom. I'm going to take a huge chunk of damage here, but at least it doesn't go to soul, because that's one of the ways Prism can start getting incremental value over you, is just building up this soul, building up the shields. So that's what I don't want to see happen. So end of the day there, I'd kind of rather take the extra 2 damage or so than see that be a Herald that could go to soul. And because I drew into the Eye of Ophidia, makes my turn a lot easier. Decisions just become, alright, I have a blue that can pay for Deadwood, we're going to play Deadwood. And Eye of Ophidia is great for that because it guarantees that I'm going to draw and discard a 6 if that's what I want. And right here, I think I made a little bit of an incorrect decision. I probably should have drawn, discarded, and then resolved the effect by banishing the Unworldly Bellow, because it's not a Blood Debt card and it's a miss. So trimming that from my graveyard would have been pretty nice there. But I think in the heat of the moment, my thought is perhaps my arsenal is something that gives me go again. I don't quite remember. So getting the Deep-Rooted Evil and banished as soon as possible is what I want to do to guarantee that I get those big aggressive turns off. So we see Tom just block out. Fine with that. Slowing down the game. The more he blocks, the less likely he is to be able to play auras, because auras cost 4. So, yep, sure enough, his turn is just going to be a Herald of Triumph, which is the one that makes your attacks -1. So, not too easy to pop with Phantasm. I do have a bunch of 7 attacks in my deck with the Graveling Growls and the Hungering Slaughterbeast, but I don't have one of those in hand, so this just becomes a normal block scenario. Do I just take it, block with 1, block with 2, covered up entirely so that it doesn't go to soul? And let's see what I'm thinking about here. My hand seems to be an all-red hand, actually. So that makes it a turn where I'm probably more likely to just block out everything anyway. But because I did banish that Deep-Rooted Evil, I'm now thinking, well, I do kind of want to just start turning off Blood Debt, because I also have the Howl from Beyond's in graveyard, and we can start getting really good value here. But looks like what my decision making was on the fly is to cover up the Herald of Triumph completely so it doesn't go to Soul. This leaves me with a, I believe, Boneyard Marauder red and a Howl from Beyond in hand. So once again, in hindsight, I think this was wrong. I probably should have just went ahead and blocked for 5, pitching the Dread Screamer back into my deck, blocking with the Howl from Beyond instead of it. Yes, I would have taken a damage, and he would have gotten a card in Soul. But getting a second Howl from Beyond in graveyard is incredible. And it would have meant that the Dread Screamer is still in deck as well. So rewatching this, kind of nice. Get to see some incorrect decisions being made here, which is good. You know, you learn from your mistakes. Flesh and Blood tends to be a game of very rapid decision making if you're playing to hopefully finish a game on time. So yeah, we see some potential mistakes. And Tom, just for the record, is still pretty new to Prism himself, so perhaps this is leveling the playing field here. And what we see here is, in a response to my attack, he's going to be playing a Merciful Retribution so that I still take damage when he takes damage. He's going to trade 3 health, 3 shields. I'm going to take 3 damage as well, and now the Merciful's in play. So this could be a potentially overwhelming point from where I am. If he can start getting double auras in play, I'm going to be very hard-pressed to start clearing them. But with me only seeing 1 at a time, I'm pretty happy to play this game. And one of the things to note when these Prism players are attacking you with shields and auras is that you don't really want to waste your health, because you never know if in a late game scenario they're going to have like a big turn of shields and you need those 1 HP points. So even when they attack you for just 1, don't overlook it and just take it at all the time. You do want to make sure that if you were going to end your turn with a card in hand, you go ahead and just block with that card, save that HP, and you'll probably be rewarded for it. So here I rolled Scab Skins because at the point of the game where I went ahead and committed a little bit to Blood Debt, which means now I'd rather be able to clear auras and still swing at Prism. So I was lucky enough to get 2 action points there with the Scab Skins, but even if I just get 1 action point on the Scab Skins, that means my turn is just going to be clear aura and I believe take 2 Blood Debt, which is not a huge deal. But the big reward here for rolling 2 action points on Scab Skins is that all of a sudden I can pressure his HP, which is potentially cards in hand, which cards in hand would then equal auras he wants to play. So it's always nice to be able to chuck some damage at Prism. And unfortunately, this attack isn't one of the best ones. It's just coming in for 6. Once again, turning off Blood Debt. What I'm really hoping to see here with these early banishes, and one of the reasons I'm going for such early banishes is because I have the Howl from Beyond in graveyard. And one of the ways you can beat Prism, even when they get auras in play, is if your damage is just really overwhelming. And I've already pretty much halfway there to doing what I want with the Deep Rooted Evil and the Howl from Beyond. So that's kind of the line I'm going for here, is I want to be able to, with those recursion engines set up, be able to just present overwhelming damage because they don't currently have auras in play, and the auras in play are going to cost them so many cards to actually put into the field. So the faster I can do damage here, the less likely they're ever going to be able to double aura me. And here comes Tom with a Dreamweaver's Herald of Erudition. But this is why you don't just block with Scab Skins willy-nilly. You want to be able to cover up the Herald of Erudition. Scab Skins is going to add 2 block. I'm going to block 3 from hand, and then boom, the Herald will not connect. So just deciding on the block here, covering up pretty well. He does have the yellow in the pitch zone, so following up with that Spectral Shield. But this is what I mentioned earlier about if you're not going to use the card, go ahead, save that HP. And with Levia as well, putting these cards in graveyard can be beneficial to decrease your odds of missing on a banish 3. So game progresses here. Back to my turn. I've got 2 cards, 1 card in Arsenal. Let's see this Arsenal card. Going to go ahead, come in with a Hungering Slaughterbeast, floating 1. So coming in for 7, these are some good numbers because if Prism blocks with likely 2 cards, I will still break the shield. unless they have a defense reaction. So all good with these kinds of attacks. Once again, I'm missing on that Howl from Beyond from Banish though, which who knows when the first opportunity would be for me to play it, but it would still be nice to know that a miss is out of the graveyard and the graveyard is ready for me to dump resources in, or the Banish Zone is ready for me to dump resources in, and pull those Howls back out. So he's going to take that hit, lose the shield, and it looks like he's doing this because, what did I say about threatening Prism when they have auras in hand? Those auras really make their turns one-dimensional because the auras don't block. They also cost 4 to play. So he took that huge chunk of damage to go ahead and get a Genesis in play. This is fine. As long as I can have some form of go again, I get to keep doing the game plan I want, and it looks like I got exactly that. I drew into the Art of War, so I've got the go again to be able to still threaten his life total, still threaten the shields, and clear the aura. So then, once again, deciding, do I take damage? At this point in the game, life totals are still favored for Tom, but that is kind of how the matchup goes. And if you saw my stream game at Nationals, even though I was behind on life, I felt like I was in a really good spot for most of that game, because that's pretty much how it is with Prism. You're going to be taking damage early so that you can start clearing their auras, but that you get ahead on the board state and will eventually win anyway. So even though I'm behind on life, feels good to me. Because you basically get to choose when a Prism deals damage to you. You can always pop the Heralds, and you can always threaten the shields, so they don't normally get too many avenues to really pressure your life total. It's just these pings of 1. So with the Art of War here, it's a fantastic card when you have that Deep Rooted in Banish or a Ghostly in Banish, because you know your go again is always going to present above average damage. So I went ahead and declared go again and banished to draw 2. Starting with the Deep Rooted here coming in for 6. And this is what I don't want to see happen, is a double aura. The good news here, though, is that I know I'll be able to clear the shield because he's only got 1 card left in hand. So no matter what, he can't cover up the full 6. He's going to lose the shield. So that does happen. But then I've got the choice here to which aura to clear, or potentially go greedy and try to clear both. So I think in a more competitive game, I never would have rolled here because clearing 1 aura puts you back on the game plan of, try not to get doubled ever. And since he used his entire hand to block out there, he doesn't have a huge window to try to get another double aura set up. So because it was an Armory event, though, I feel more lax about rolling the dice because there's nothing really on the line. It's all just for fun. And that die roll was a 6. So that was fantastic. It made the game way different at this point. This was like the big pivot moment. Looks like that card in Arsenal was a red Graveling Growl. So with that 6 I rolled, all 3 action points were actually used up. You normally don't see that unless you have like a Ghostly Visit and Banish, but I'm able there to Claw, and then swing with Graveling. So all of a sudden, game flips hugely in this moment. But sometimes you do just get lucky. I'd rather get lucky than unlucky, right? But unlucky will happen more often than getting lucky. So these moments do tend to feel pretty good. Pretty good. So Tom's turn is just draw pass because he committed his entire hand to that last double aura play that I just made disappear. So we're going to go ahead and see. My hand looks like it drew into another Art of War. But without that Deep Rooted Evil in Banish now, it's not necessarily correct to go for that. So that's exactly the line you see me take here. I'm going to actually go for a Dread Screamer. I want to get that Deep Rooted back in Banish Zone. And funny enough, I have a Heart of Fyendel, so I do heal a life from this position. It was 21 to 20. So look at that. Gain a little bit of value. And boom. Also banish the Deep Rooted Evil. Fantastic setup here. Fantastic. That Howl from Beyond still refuses to banish. Oh well. So it's likely that with this hand that I've got, I'm going to try to just lead in following up that Dread Screamer with the Deep Rooted. Or if he does choose to play an aura, then I'm just going to sink that resource into swinging claws and popping the aura. So my options look really, really strong in this turn, especially because I'll be able to arsenal the Art of War. So this turn is really not about pressuring his life total, it's about pressuring his ability to play auras again. And looks like he does have an aura in hand, but you know, it's tricky to be able to pay for those things. And yep, sure enough, so he did not play an aura, so that means let's go ahead and batter his life total in. So Deep Rooted coming in. That is now two, is that 3 uses total of this card? 2 uses total? I've been really warming up to this card, honestly. It is so good when you get to play it like even 2 or 3 times in a game. You really feel the value that it brings to the table. And it is unfortunate that it costs 3 to play, but in this matchup, when you have Tunic, you do tend to have just those extra resources to throw around. So it comes up quite a bit. So, gonna be the Art of War and Arsenal, which is fantastic because the more go again you have, the better in this matchup to threaten life, threaten shields, and then pop auras. So counting blood debt here, I think I had 8 blood debt at this point in the game, which is getting pretty high, but you know, the way life totals are, Tom's really not in a position to ever threaten my life again. So what I'm looking at when I check blood debt there is my ability to potentially whiff and not die. So I'm looking at basically 2 turns of potentially whiffing and not dying. Obviously, I don't want any of those turns to happen, but it is nice to know that that's kind of the game state we're in, where the way Tom is on the back foot now, I will be fine to pretty much only take damage from myself and then some shield chip damage. So he just drew past. Little interesting, looks like his hand was pretty clunky with the Prismatic Shield, the Tome, and the Ode. So I get to start off my turn really strong here with the Art of War. Tunic Resource is amazing with Art of War because you can just get the most information possible before you even decide what to pitch. So we're going to choose Banish, Draw 2, and Go again. And this is going to give me quite a big hand to work with. Don't you love to see it? You get to play Art of War off Tunic. Art of War was in your arsenal to start with. Man, it's just so many cards. So good. These are the kind of turns where Hell from Beyond would be fantastic. You just get to sink those resources into free damage. So the Hungering Slaughter Beast is going to be coming in for 7 with Go again. Really hoping to once again hit the Hell from Beyond. Let's see if it happens, finally. Ooh, still sitting in that graveyard. But Blood Debt is going to be off regardless this turn because of the Art of War. So these attacks like Hungering Slaughter Beast that don't really gain an upside from banishing 3, you want to just go ahead and play them on these kind of turns. Clear out what you can from the graveyard, get that Art of War out of there, get the Howl out of there, since Blood Debt is just already off anyway. So when Tom uses Halo here, I'm always worried of a big Tome turn, but it starts off pretty clunky because it looks like he puts a Prismatic Shield into Soul. So that's not going to draw him a card to really get things going here, but his options seem to be pretty tight because he couldn't put the Herald in Soul because he needed enough resources to play the Tome, because that Prismatic was red. So drawing 3 here, honestly 3 at this point is like nothing special. All he did was cycle a card from this position, or cycle 3 cards from this position, right? And turn on Vestige of Soul. But Vestige of Soul on the defending turn is not really incredible unless you draw into a second Tome. And it looks like he just didn't draw into a second Tome. So not a lot of value to be gained here. So he's going to take that 7. Take that 7. Incredible. For my position, I'm loving this. So with my hand of Command and Conquer, Doomsday, and a Convulsions from the Bellows of Hell, in this kind of position, I'd love to just go ahead, play Command and Conquer to threaten him, but at the same time, the faster I get Doomsday into play and summon Blasmafet, the more value I'm going to gain because I'm on the front foot. I'll just be able to clear his soul like crazy. So this is a pretty cool line that opens up. I get to go ahead and play the Doomsday. We do have to wind it back for 1 second here because he can respond to the cast of Doomsday. So that's what happens here. On the cast of Doomsday with the Vestige active, he's going to be able to pay for the Ode to Wrath with the floating resource and pitching a yellow. But, you know, I'm totally fine here. I mean, he's really never going to threaten the HP threshold that I'm at. So I get to summon the Blasmafet, and then I love this interaction versus Prism where you get to declare the attack and don't banish yet. You get to wait and see what they do. And depending on what they do, you can then trigger your effect to banish a card. So you can sometimes bait them with the shields here. So he decides to not respond to the declaration, so then the triggered effect pops in, and you can banish any shadow card to resolve that effect. So since I already turned off Blood Debt, and I already have a card to Arsenal anyway, I get to banish a Convulsions from the Bells of Hell to still banish a Soul from Prism. It's just so cool how those interactions line up. You don't see it all the time, but feels real good. So I'm gonna go ahead Arsenal that Command and Conquer. Because now I've got the safety net in play of Blasmafet being able to turn off Blood Debt. So I'm not too worried about putting a card that doesn't turn off Blood Debt in my arsenal. Then on Tom's turn here, he's going to try to get value out of the Ode to Wrath and the Spectral Shield because they will each deal potentially 2 damage. Still not too worried about this, but there's always a decision to be made of if you're not using the cards, you might as well block them anyway, right? So still have to think a little bit, don't want to get sloppy. And sure enough, I'm going to check the graveyard here because now that you cast Doomsday, that adds a miss to the graveyard. I had the Howl as a miss as well. So I'm looking at my hand because I have this Ghostly Visit that I'd love to put in graveyard, but I have 2 misses. And my lose condition right now is to just take 2 turns of Blood Debt damage. Right, that's how I lose. So I don't want to give myself that option at all. So I'm actually not going to block with the Ghostly Visit because I don't need to be greedy to get that extra value. I pretty much have the game exactly where I want it anyway. So I'm going to take 1 increment of 2 damage. I'm going to block one of the other ones. And then come in with my turn with a Scabskins. And in these positions, you should just always roll Scabskins because Blasmafet costs 0 to attack with anyway. And you have Gambler's Gloves up still. So these are the kind of game states you're just going to roll Scabskins every turn. In fact, I probably should have rolled it last turn as well. Until you're forced to break Gamblers, then you can't really do this. So my turn there becomes rewarded on the Gambler's Gloves, get to break his aura, which is really not even like a super relevant one. The Ode to Wrath sitting there, not a big deal. But that extra action point lets me just do it for free because of Blasmafet. And then I'm going to come in with the Endless Maw. Endless Maw finally going to hit that Howl from Beyond. And it is coming in for now 9. So what I pitch here is a Blood Rush Bellows and a Ghostly Visit. So I actually have not played any Blood Rush Bellows this game, but you don't really need it necessarily to beat Prism because it becomes a card that just lets them get huge value off Arclight Sentinel. That's another card we just haven't seen this game. I know Tom was running them, but he just hasn't seen an Arclight Sentinel yet. So, you know, that's another reason this game is going so well for me here. This is part of the Prism variants, not really Levia's variants. Prism can just draw hot and be amazing, or she can just not draw things in the right order and be a little subpar. So that's what's happening here. And then attack's gonna hit hard. Tom doesn't have a turn, passing it back over to me. Feeling great. Still have this Blasmafet. I'd be surprised if I don't roll Scabskins here again. Checking the graveyard, making sure. Yeah, I have the 1 miss. I've got only the Doomsday. I've got that Howl. So playing Howl is always safe here because now I'm at 2 misses in graveyard. So I will never miss Blood Debt completely. So going in for the Howl. He's going to let that resolve. Cool. Then I'm going to follow this up with an attack. It is going to be, I believe, a Dread Screamer. Yeah, Dread Screamer. First red one of the game. These cards are so good. So it's coming in for 9. 2 resources floating, because this is what happens when you get ahead and they pass you these big hands. You get to just sink resources into stuff like Howl from Beyond. It's just free damage. And look at that banish. Best banish of the game. Deep Rooted Evil, Howl from Beyond, and another 6. So I have so many options for this follow-up attack, and it is coming in for 9. Go again. Incredible value. I've got Blasmafet up. I mean, everything is just looking good. He is going to cover up the 9, but, you know, we're seeing a lot of his cards gone. He's got 1 card left to defend with, unless his arsenal card is a defense reaction, and he's got no resources to pay for the Phantasmal Footsteps block. So look at that. I get to recast the Howl into Command and Conquer for 9. And yeah, that is it. He just cannot block it out. I win. So guys, that is what a great Levia game looks like. Hope you enjoyed it. And I will probably be posting more of these videos in the future. So with that, this was Mansant.